Hi students. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to read a book about a topic that I think you really enjoy. And the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to give you a clue about what it is that we're going to read about. And that clue is sometimes when it comes, we use an umbrella. Does anybody have an idea on what we're reading about today? Danielle? Yes, we'll be reading about rain. Our book today is called Down Comes the Rain. I wanted to point something out in our book. You'll notice on the front cover, the children are looking up. And I wanted to find out what you thought they were looking up for. Yes, they are looking up at the rains, and it appears that they're looking to see where it's coming from. So in our reading today, we're going to find out where rain comes from. Rain comes from clouds. Now, if you notice, clouds are different colors. You have some that are gray. You have some that are black. You have some that are white. Now, we don't see too many white clouds here, but they are different colors. Do you happen to know what clouds are made of? What do you think they're made of? Well, not quite. They're not made of cotton, but we know that if they were made of cotton, they would start drooping when the rain comes from them, because and that might be something that we can do once we're done. When we wet a cotton ball, what happens to it? It absorbs. If it's any type of liquid, it'll absorb and it would just not become white and fluffy. But let's continue on. All clouds, big ones, little ones, gray ones, black ones, white ones, they are made of billions of tiny drops of water. The drops are called droplets because they are so small. If this is the size of a drop of water, a droplet would just be a tiny speck, even smaller than this one. You can probably barely see it from where you're sitting. Water droplets come from water vapor. Now I'm getting ready to tell you what water vapor is. Can anybody tell me before I tell you what it is? Yes, that's right, Darius. Water vapor is a gas. There's always water vapor in the air, but you can't always see it. You can't smell it, and you can't feel it. Water vapor is made when water evaporates. Now, when something evaporates, it's just like it wasn't even there. Sometime in the morning time, if you get up early enough, you go out and you just feel the grass, and the grass is wet. But by the time you really get going during the day, the water or dew has evaporated. When wet clothes hang on a clothesline, the water in them evaporates. The heat from the sun changes the water drops and droplets into water vapor. What did we say water vapor was? A gas. Just like the heat from the stove changes water in the kettle to water vapor, if you heat it long enough, all the water boils away, and I have had that happen before. The water vapor goes into the air. Most of the water vapor in the air comes from lakes, rivers, or oceans. It comes from the leaves of plants and from the wet ground. The water changes from a liquid to gas, and the water vapor goes into the air. When you breathe out, you put water vapor into the air. Usually, you cannot see the water vapor, but it is there. When cows, horses, and dogs breathe out, they put water vapor in the air too. On a cold day, the water vapor changes to droplets and makes little clouds that you can see. And you notice your breath when if it's very cold, or even opening up the freezer, when you begin to talk, you'll see the water vapor as you're in the freezer, or outside when it's cold outside, you'll see the difference. You can make water vapor change to water. Water vapor in the air is condensing on the glass. There may be so much condensation that the glass drips. Sometimes the glass stays dry. That means there is not much water vapor in the air. The air holds the water vapor. Its breezes carry it from one place to another. Much of the vapor moves up and away from the earth. Air above the earth is always cold. The higher you go, the colder it gets. When air gets cold enough, the water vapor in it condenses. The vapor changes to water droplets. The water droplets make clouds. A single droplet is so small you cannot see it, but you can see a cloud. That's because there are millions and millions and millions of water droplets in a cloud. So what do we know about clouds? Yes, clouds are tiny bits of water. And is it just a couple? There are millions of tiny droplets in a cloud. Sometimes there are only a few small raindrops that fall slowly, and that just means it's drizzling. Sometimes there are lots of big drops that fall very fast. Now it is pouring, and I know how that can be. You see the boys and girls, they're just playing in front of the barn, and it's pouring, so they're trying to come inside. But while it's drizzling, they can stand outside and they're still trying to play. Sometimes the drops and clouds freeze. These raindrops become ice drops. This can happen even on a hot summer day. That's because the clouds of water droplets are high above the earth, and many clouds are so high that it's freezing cold. In these high cold clouds, water vapor changes to droplets, and the droplets change to drops. The drops freeze into ice. As they are carried upward, more water collects on the tiny bits of ice. When that water freezes, the drops of ice have another layer on them. The ice drops are now heavier. So once more they fall toward earth, but air moving away from the earth may carry the ice drops upward. And again, higher and higher they go, and another layer of ice forms onto them. The ice drops get heavier and heavier. They get so heavy that the air can no longer carry them upward. So the ice drops to earth. It's raining ice. Now, South Dakota, it can be raining ice, or it's also called hail. It can be hailing in a moment's notice, especially during this time of year. The ice drops are called hailstones. They may be the size of your fingernail, or they can be as big as a golf ball. In the 1970s, hailstorms as big as softballs fell on Kansas. Fields of corn were flattened by the hailstones. Something else happens when hail begins to fall is your cars are damaged and people actually can get hurt. So it's very important for you, if it is hailing, that you come inside immediately. Hailstones are not stones, they're pieces of ice. Somehow, when it hails, go inside so you're not hitting the head. When it stops hailing, go outside and pick up a hailstone. Break it into two, and you'll see the layers of ice. So remember, hailstones are not stones, but they're layers of ice. Water and the clouds makes hail. Water and the clouds make rain. When it stops raining or hailing, the sun comes out. Once more, water evaporates. So we learn that even though water comes from the clouds, when the sun comes out, the water, it evaporates. It's just like it was never there. But we know that that's water vapor, goes back up it goes up into the air. It evaporates from lakes, rivers, and oceans. It evaporates from the leaves of plants and from the wet ground. It evaporates from cows and horses, from cats and dogs, and from you and from me. Think about sometimes when you have a cup of water that just kind of sat on the counter. Maybe you put flowers in it. Maybe there were some flowers that you picked for your mom or dad, and you put those flowers in water and see what happens after a couple of days. What happens to the water level? Does it stay the same or does it go down? And if it goes down, you just witnessed evaporation at its best. Sometimes we sweat, our body perspires, and before we know it, we begin to dry. Well, what happens to the water? It evaporates. Once more, it is raining. So now you can remember what happens again when it rains. Yes, when it rains, the water comes down. Those are tiny drops of water that come from the clouds. And when they come from the clouds, sometimes, depending on the temperature, they get hard and they become hailstones. And when they become hailstones, they come to the ground. Sometimes they're as small as your fingernail, and sometimes they're as big as, that's right, golf balls. So it's very important that we remember what happens to the rain. When it gets down to earth, it starts with an E. It evaporates. And where does it evaporate from? Give me 3 ways, 3 places that evaporate from. It evaporates from you and me. That's right. It evaporates from the ocean. And it evaporates from land. All right. Well, thank you so much for paying attention today. And we will continue with our reading. We'll reread through after lunch. Thank you.